Hail and well met, Slayers of Giants. I know a lot of you came here through the Brickgate saga. Welcome. A couple updates on that. We learned today that the TRO that was gagging Reckless Ben has been mostly erased and converted into a preliminary injunction, and that change will allow him, Reckless Ben, one of 4 or 5 Bens involved in this story, to release his Part 3 soon. It might be up on his Patreon by the time you're seeing/hearing this. I encourage you to become a patron of his Patreon and get an early glimpse of that because it will be awesome. That is going to take over YouTube in a few days. I have some added news about that. I interviewed Ben twice, once before the TRO and a follow-up recently. And now that this completely ridiculous notion that we're somehow colluding with this guy we didn't even know before BAM took our store has been pretty safely put to bed. BAM could still claim it, but without some very credulous judge buying their outlandish claims, it seems unlikely they'll go that route. I can now release those interviews. So be sure to subscribe to this channel wherever you're finding it so you don't miss those interviews because they're really great. I think you're going to enjoy the hell out of those. And speaking of subscribers, after making videos on YouTube for more than, I think, like a decade, I've jumped to around 10 times the number of subscribers I used to have. I'd like to increase the number of shows I make for you all, but I know some of my own limitations. I can't write more chapters of this book each week. There's just, I can't write that fast. Also, this book is a novel. It will come to an end. We're a few chapters away from that, but we're nearing a final confrontation with Megacorp and with the evil wizard Fenkum. Loud wink, Fenkum. Also, I could do a lot more interesting shows with a very different person to bounce ideas off of. Also, I need more friends. I can recognize all these things about myself. So I'm looking for a co-host. If you're saying to yourself, I'd be a great co-host for a show with an author who likes to interview other authors and artists of various kinds, and I can do a weekly live where we gab about whatever's going on in the news and the way our guests' work connects with the world we live in, please send me an email at NotAPipePublishing@gmail.com with the subject line co-host audition, and tell me a bit about yourself and what you'd like to bring to a weekly show, both on camera and behind the scenes. And then I'll do some lives with various potential co-hosts, and we'll let the audience decide which is the best fit. Maybe you're an author or a musician or an artist of some other kind, and you are saying, I should be engaging more with the people who consume my art. Maybe you're saying I am not just willing, but I'm interested in talking about politics and the way art and culture connect with our political moment. Maybe you're just a really good interviewer. That would be a lot of fun. So let me know if you'd be interested. Okay, if you're just joining us for this novel for the first time, you are in for a trip. If you find yourself wondering, wait, a story about knights errant and their magical familiars? What the F is this funny-looking bald guy talking about? I encourage you to go back to Chapter 1 and catch up on this whole serial novel, which starts when the fictional character, Benjamin, has a break with reality because he's been so beaten down by, among other things, being left destitute after the theft of his life savings by a corporation called Megacorp. He invents a Don Quixote-esque character who's a knight-errant, and that character is traveling around righting wrongs. Only unlike Don Quixote, who's crazy, Rolando de Santa Maria del Pi of Barcelona is sane and correct about living in a world of hidden magic, and he's come to the United States to figure out why this land is cursed. Rolando has taken on a squire, Serge Sanchez, and then Serge was knighted by the goddess of Lake Erie, so he's now Sir Sanchez of the town of Eels, guardian of justice and protector of mermaids. My wife realized that she missed why he was the Sir Sanchez of the town of Eels. He's from Hillsborough, and when Rolando, who has a Spanish accent, says Hillsborough, the H is silent in Spanish, it comes out Eelsboro. And Eelsboro, town of eels. There you go. Anyway, Serge has got a familiar like Rolando, only Rolando's is a raven, and Serge's familiar is a red panda. They befriended a woman named Callie on their journey who turned out to be a Selkie mermaid hybrid, and she reappeared with Sir Steezel and Reckless Ken to rescue Rolando and Serge from a group of monsters from Japanese folklore who'd been sent to kill them. They then traveled to Chicago to attend a meeting of the spirits of the Great Lakes, and that's where we left off last week. It's a lot. Before I begin reading Chapter 23, thank you all for the overwhelming support as we battle a corporation that made it clear they want to make our lives shit. Their words, right? Whether you are a commenter, a GoFundMe donor, a person who has told a friend, have you heard about this Brickgate thing? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. He's coming to you through your computer or phone, from NotAPipe HQ with a guest all alone. He's nobody's hero, trying to run for the hills, but now he's back and tilting at windmills. Okay, back to our story. As I remind everyone each week, this is just a draft. It can still be changed before it gets compiled into the novel you'll be able to hold in your hands. In fact, I'm considering changing the title. Tilting at Windmills seemed to make the most sense as I started, but now that the Bricks and Minifigs drama is taking over more and more of my life, and the confrontation with Megacorp is, coincidentally, taking over more of Benjamin the fictional character's life, I'm beginning to think a more fitting title for the book might be Brick by Brick. Let me know what you think. And if you notice anything, a typo in the text on my Patreon or Substack, a continuity error, those are really important to catch, and authors often miss those. We don't see them. A huge structural change you'd recommend. I appreciate any and all feedback. So put that in the comments wherever you're finding this, and I'll wrangle all those notes into my document that I use as I edit the final version. Now here's Chapter 23 of Tilting at Windmills. Tilting at Windmills, or maybe Brick by Brick, Chapter 23, The Sword of the Underestimated. The three knights, Callie, and the three familiars stood on the concrete ledge overlooking Lake Michigan, the water level 6 feet below them. The five great spirits, the ladies and lords of the lakes, stood on the surface of the water like it was made of stone. This created a strange imbalance in their conversation, the revered and powerful ladies and lords below, the mortals looking down on them from above. The ladies and lords didn't mind, they were used to looking up at humans examining them. But it felt off to the humans, who couldn't bow low enough to show their deference in a human way. When Lady Canadario, the spirit of Lake Ontario, invited the humans and their undead familiars to join the ladies and lords for a banquet, Serge and Callie looked at one another, unsure how that would work. Rolando and Sir Steezel, more accustomed to violations of the laws of physics, sat down on the edge of the pier, then dropped onto the water, careful not to leap, lest they turn an ankle, falling the full 6 feet onto the hard surface the spirits had created for them. Reckless Ken, Sir Steezel's billy goat familiar, leapt on the top of the water and took a few clattering steps to slow itself down. Serge and Callie exchanged shrugs before following the other knights. Serge's familiar, the red panda Gorman, then jumped onto Serge's shoulder before climbing down his body and tentatively stepping onto the surface of the water. It had only been in its new familiar form for a few weeks and wasn't sure if its ability to pass through solid surfaces might translate to whatever magic the spirits of the lakes were using to make the water solid, and it also didn't know if red pandas can swim. They can, though they don't do so very often. After tapping the surface with a claw, it made its way down Serge's leg and onto all fours. Poe, Lord Rolando's raven familiar, felt confident it could walk on the surface or fly beneath it if it so desired, but it landed on Rolando's shoulder, out of a sense of decorum. Serge scanned the tourists on Navy Pier to see what they made of 4 people walking out onto Lake Michigan right in front of them. The ones leaning on the railing pointed over their heads at the lights coming on in the skyscrapers of Chicago as the sun set on the other side of the pier, completely ignoring the magic they didn't want to acknowledge. Lady Canadario raised a hand slowly, and a large dining table and 12 chairs rose up out of the lake, dripping water as they ascended, but dry once everything arrived at its proper height. The long table looked to be made out of driftwood, smoothed to a perfectly polished plane, with ornate carvings on the sides and around the three legs, which had wide bases and climbed, tree-like, to solid trunks connected to the table's middle line. The chairs had matching carvings and flat seats with no cushions, a physical reminder to keep things formal. The ladies and lords sat down on one side of the table. Lady Gichigami, their queen and the spirit of Lake Superior, sat in the middle, with Lady Ariel Honan, the spirit of Lake Erie, on her immediate right, Lady Kanadario beyond her, and Lord Mishigami, the spirit of Lake Michigan, on her left, Lord Gigun Zagaigan, the spirit of Lake Huron, sitting beyond his brother, his long insect wings stretched out on either side of the back of his chair, carefully avoiding the surface of the lake so they could continue drying in the last of the evening's light. 3 decorative candelabras stood just above the positions of the table's legs, each carrying a dozen long, thin candles. These lit the place settings: crisp white placemats with ornate blue and white china plates and bowls, 3 spoons, 2 knives, and 2 forks at each. The food was contained in matching china bowls distributed between the candelabras. "This looks lovely, Lady Kanadario," Ariel Honan said as she sat. Lady Gichigami leaned forward, looked at Lady Kanadario, smiled, and gave her a slow nod of approval. Lady Kanadario beamed back and bowed more curtly at her queen. The humans and familiars took their seats with less grace, awkwardly figuring out their placements. Lord Orlando motioned for Sir Steezel to take the seat in the middle, directly across from Lady Gichigama. Sir Steezel made a wordless attempt to encourage Lord Rolando to take that honored seat, but Rolando pretended not to notice it, and sat down first, directly across from Lady Ariel Honan. Lady Kanadario made an eager, almost childlike wave, directing Callie to sit down next to Lord Rolando, across from her. Sir Sanchez sat down next to Sir Steezel, across from Lord Mishigami, and his familiar, Koman, hopped up onto the chair next to him, then stood on its hind legs, looked at the food, raised both its arms straight up in the air in the instinctive gesture it used for both approval and alarm, then reassured Serge it wasn't alerting him to poison by clapping together its paws and rubbing them back and forth in excitement, before slumping its little shoulders when it remembered it couldn't eat food anymore. Reckless Ken jumped up onto the seat next to Koman at the head of the table, sharing a corner with Lord Gigu Gonzaigan. Then it took another jump up onto the top of the back of the chair. The chair leaned back onto 2 legs, but the billy goat balanced it, dancing it as it wobbled, and Reckless Ken made a graceful turn around on the tiny edge so it faced inward, then stood there, towering over everyone, waiting patiently for the conversation to begin. Poe didn't take the seat at the foot of the table. It remained on Rolando's shoulder, leaving the chair next to Lady Kanadario and Callie empty. No one minded. Callie looked at the steaming food in the bowls in the center of the table, unsure if she should begin serving herself. "Do we say grace?" she whispered to Lady Kanadario. Lady Gichigami pretended not to hear her and said, "Lord Mishigami, if you would say the blessing." Everyone bowed their heads. Lord Mishigami said, "Go blue." The ladies and lords nodded decisively and began serving themselves, while the humans muttered awkward amens. "You're lucky," Lady Ariel Honan said. She looked at her brother and grinned, showing her feline teeth and twitching her cougar whiskers. Sometimes he lists every team, college and professional, in the Great Lakes area. The blessing takes a half an hour. The spirit of Lake Michigan, blue from his pointy hair to his shoes except for the bright yellow M on his sweatshirt chest, said, "I don't like to play favorites, at least not at every meal." Lady Kanadario held a bowl towards Callie. "Try this and tell me what you think. It's something new I'm tinkering with. It's like a stuffing, but made with fish instead of turkey, and not cooked inside anything. Like a fish casserole, with bread and herbs and things. You aren't allergic to onions or garlic, I hope?" "It smells wonderful," Callie said, dishing herself 2 heaping spoonfuls. Lord Orlando used the tongs to fill his salad bowl, which still stood in the center of his plate. "Lady Ariel Honan, as Sir Sanchez said, we were able to find Brianna and move her somewhere safe before she could be kidnapped. But we failed to find Joanna in Sioux Falls, Lana in Ontario, Oregon, or Rihanna here in Chicago. Do you know if there are other Ananas who are missing?" "After I lost contact with the 4 out west, as the others touched base, I ordered them to return to the little ponds and forests far from human habitation where they feel more comfortable. But I told them to send word to me more frequently, so I would know they are safe. As of now, I think they're all secure, but without anyone reporting via the rivers, my information gathering network is broken. I'm in the dark, so I called my siblings together to see if they knew more. Lord Gigun Zagaigan, who took very small, almost mayfly-sized bites of food, swallowed and raised an empty fork as he spoke. I admit I feel more Canadian than American, but I do get some news from my southern bank. From what I hear, it sounds like the curse is building to something of a head. Peaceful protesters being killed, jailed for decades for publishing pamphlets. Where's the public outcry? Sir Steezel shook his head slowly. It barely makes the news. People say the media doesn't care, but the media isn't some organized entity. It's a lot of individual journalists and outlets with flagging readership who are desperately trying to figure out what people will pay attention to and serve stories on that. And because of the curse, the people just don't care very much. Yes, Rolando agreed. I am not so convinced that the situation is nearing some kind of dramatic climax, which will result in a sea change in public opinion, or some all-out confrontation with the government, or the underlying political or economic system. I fear this is just the next step in the progression of the curse, and unless we are able to discover its source and break the curse itself, all these effects from the curse are downstream. Sea change. Downstream. You're speaking our language, Lord Orlando, Lady Ariel Hanan said. He's quite eloquent for a guy who absolutely butchers common English phrases all the time, Serge said. This language makes no sense. I follow all the rules, and then the Brits say something will take place in the weekend, and the Americans say it will take place on the weekend. And both are convinced they are absolutely correct. Slang may vary across the Spanish-speaking world, but the fundamental rules of grammar do not change when one of our former colonies becomes independent. They don't rebel by breaking the language in this way, or on this way, or under this way. I don't know enough about linguistics to defend English, Serge said. Sir Steezel raised a friendly eyebrow at Lord Orlando. I know enough about Spanish to know vos might be exaggerating about the uniformity of the language a bit. Rolando laughed. This is very fair, Sir Steezel. Sir Steezel reached his thumbs through his ghostly armor and hooked them around his suspenders. That's my thing, trying to be fair to both sides. Lady Ariel Honan caught the concern in Lord Orlando's eye and translated for him. I hope you will also remember that there aren't two sides when it comes to kidnapping my Anhanas. Sir Steezel sobered and bowed his head. Of course, my lady. I am bound to right wrongs, and that is a wrong which must be righted. So, as I understand it, we have two problems, Serge said. We don't know where this wizard, Fenkum, is located. Now that we have 3 knights, we can handle his swinemen, right, Rolando? I believe so, yes. But we have to find him. Meanwhile, Garibald of Gaul is trying to kill us. And the Hanyas he sent told us he's working for someone, but they wouldn't tell us who. So, assuming it's the same person or group that's employing Fenkum, we need to find them, too. Lord Mishigami frowned. Lady Gishigami caught it and stared at him. Then she raised her hand, palm flat, fingers extended and fixed together in a stop sign. 1 or 2? Lord Mishigami asked. Lady Gichigami curled 3 of her fingers, then pointed the 2 at him, curled her hand at the wrist, and pointed them at Serge. Lord Mishigami nodded and spoke to Serge. Sir Sanchez, there are 2 more problems we see, and they are rooted in the assumptions you are making. First, you have 3 knights, but there are 4 of you. Why assume the 3 of you do not require a 4th? Serge looked at Callie, and her eyes widened. Rolando rolled his head slightly in exasperation, then nodded through a scowl. I mean, do you want to? Serge asked. Callie gaped. I don't know. I don't know what that would, entail. Lady Canadario bounced in her seat. We'd give you a sword. But there is a code, Rolando said. There are vows that must be taken. It is not so easy as this. It's pretty easy for us, Lady Ariel Hanan said. Hard for the knight. She'll learn that. And second, Lord Mishigami said, calling them back to silence. Second, you should not assume this Garibald of Gaul is working for Fenkum, or that Fenkum is working for the same employer or liege. There are powers. He looked at Lady Gishigami. She closed her eyes slowly, then gave a nod that was, for her, rather curt. Lord Michigami pursed his lips and blinked for a second, thinking, then spoke with great care. We are aware of powers which are not known to humans. Factions. Interests. The most dangerous of these do not announce themselves. They do not ask for worship or fealty from humans. That wouldn't even make sense to them. They would think of it like commanding the loyalty of mayflies. He turned to Lord Gigun Zagaigan. No offense, brother. I know you don't demand the worship of your beloved mayflies. No, I just think they're cool, mostly as symbols of the food chain, but also cool as insects. They are cool, Lord Orlando said. Yes, well, these other forces may take an interest in human affairs in a similar way, viewing you all as moderately interesting insects. More than moderately interesting, Lord Gigun Kasaigan grumbled. But more often, they ignore you and this entire planet completely. They have bigger fish to fry, Lady Canadario said, then smiled at Callie and whispered, I love fish references. Yes, bigger fish to fry, Lord Michigami agreed. But we suspect this may be a case where there is some conflict among them, and your United States may be in the midst of a kind of proxy war, not between countries, but between powers greater than countries. Lord Orlando couldn't help but smile wryly at this. Chiquita Banana versus ExxonMobil. Fitting. Something like that, or capitalism versus communism in the 60s and 70s, with millions of peasants dying for either side without understanding why. Sir Steezel leaned forward. Can you tell us who these mysterious forces are? Where to find them? Lord Michigami looked at Lady Gichigami. She shook her head. We'd like to tell you, but there are two insurmountable hurdles. For one thing, we have promised not to reveal even the slightest clues about our grandparents and great-grandparents, on penalty of losing our home here on this planet and in this dimension. He paused and raised an eyebrow that said, Hope you're taking notes. Also, we are not sure your language could communicate much about them, and if they could, we're afraid it would melt your brains. Turn you all into booties, Lady Canadario said. They swim upside down or sideways, known as duck-billed sleepers or upside-down sleepers, but some humans call them crazy fish. If you learned about... She pointed up, then to the left, then down. Them, you might start doing what booties do. Or like those orcas who were wearing salmon corpses for hats, Lord Gigun Gazaigan said. That was weird. Yes, like that, Lady Canadario said, and she allowed her eyes to sneak away from Callie for a moment and give a hinting glance to Rolando. The queen raised her hand very slowly, holding it out flat in front of her, like someone choosing paper in a game of Rochambeau, then snapping it to the side only a few inches like a karate chop, but faster than lightning, so fast it seemed to disappear and reappear in its new location. This confirmed Rolando's guess that the woman's ponderous speed was an affectation. She could move plenty fast if she felt like it. The four other ladies and lords shut their mouths so quickly their teeth clicked together. I see, Sir Steezel said. But can you tell us where you think Fenkum might be located? Lord Michigami didn't check with Lady Gichigami. This we can help with, he said. We do not know where he is located, but we can tell you where to find someone who will know where he is. And that person is close by, over in Michigan. Sir Steezel looked at Rolando. Then Michigan is our next stop. Not quite. After we conclude our business here, Lady Ariel Honan said, you'll have 2 new knights who will need appropriate vestments for your trials ahead. We have a line on a certain tailor who can help with that too. You'll want to go to Portland to find the armorer. Serge frowned. So we have to go back to Portland, then come back here? Ariel Honan smiled. You're a knight-errant, Sir Sanchez. There's a fair bit of wandering built into the job description. Rolando made an expression with his face and hands which said, right? And Serge sat back a bit, chastened. But first, let's get to the knighting, Lady Canadario said. I just want to say, for the record, I think this is very hasty, Rolando said. Of course I trust your judgment, lords and ladies of the Great Lakes. But Callie, he turned in his seat to the woman beside him. Dear Lady Callie, the lion-hearted of Santa Leon, please do not take this softly. Lightly, Serge helped. Yes, it is a very serious commitment. You must pledge yourself to an unattainable love, and then live your life in an effort to bring glory to that love itself. This will protect you from temptation, and protect the world from the awesome power you will possess as a knight-errant or warrior mage. That is the heart of the Code of Chivalry." Sir Steezel leaned forward so he could see Callie past Rolando, and he raised a finger. Not all of us believe that. I didn't pledge myself to any individual. I pledged to right wrongs, fight for justice, to be fair, and to be true to myself. I think that accomplishes the same goal as the whole unattainable love thing. Rolando shook his head. "I do not agree. We can all justify things to ourselves. And of course we could still deceive ourselves. But it is more difficult when there is an external North Star. Our friend Sir Sanchez here may tell himself he is doing right to keep a duende in his closet to protect the people it would harm. Or he may tell himself he would be right to slay the monster and save all the humans it would ever hurt with its mischief. But this is not how he should judge. He should say, if I were standing before Lady Ariel Honan, wielding the magical sword she bestowed upon me, what would bring more glory to her name? Decapitating this little duende, or using my magic to bind it and trap it in my own home, where it can torture only me? Which is the greater act of bravery, which I would be proud to have recounted to Lady Ariel Honan, should I ever meet her again? This is how he should decide." Sir Steezel leaned back. "It's a distinction without a difference. If he knows what is right, he will do the same thing either way. No offense to you, Lady Ariel Honan, but wondering what a great spirit would want is an unnecessary complication to the decision-making. Serge, should you kill the duende or keep it captive? You already know your answer." Sir Sanchez thought for a moment. "I do, though I am curious what you would recommend, Lady Ariel Honan." The panther-human hybrid smiled, a warm gesture made tantalizingly dangerous by her very sharp teeth. "I would ask a question of you first, Sir Sanchez. If you know what you believe to be right, and then I were to say the opposite, would you change your mind or continue down your own path?" Sir Steezel looked at Serge with wide eyes and an inclined head that said, "See?" Serge said. "I suppose I would take your advice under consideration, but if it came right down to it, I would do what I think would bring you the greater glory, not what you told me to do." "This is the correct answer, Sir Sanchez," Rolando said. Sir Steezel threw up his hands. "But it proves my point. If he's going to do what he thinks is right regardless, what's the purpose of having an outside point of reference? The choice is the choice." Serge, emboldened by Rolando's approval, challenged Sir Steezel's "see" expression with his own, which said, "Are you so sure about that?" He said, "This could be true 100% of the time, but what if, even 1% of the time, the recognition that the right action would bring the greatest glory to Lady Ariel Honan would make the difference between doing what seems right and what is truly right?" "Okay," countered Sir Steezel, "but just to play devil's advocate, what if your guess at what would bring the most glory to Lady Ariel Honan led you to make the wrong choice rather than the right one?" Rolando nodded. "I acknowledge this is a possibility, but orienting the decision around bringing glory to an unattainable beloved moves the decision away from a temptation to be selfish." "Maybe," Sir Steezel said, unconvinced. "Or maybe it just demands a different kind of self-deception, a backflip in mental gymnastics instead of a front flip." "You land on the same hooves," Reckless Ken said. "Exactly," Sir Steezel said. Reckless Ken turned and paced on the back of the chair, a tiny movement in one direction, a slow turn, and a few steps the other way, all while keeping the chair balanced on its two back legs. "But you don't land in quite the same spot," the billy goat said. "Close, but not quite." "Fine," Sir Steezel said. "Ultimately, it's up to you, Lady Callie. I'm just saying, you don't have to pledge yourself to an unattainable love to be a real knight-errant with honor." Rolando disagreed, but couldn't figure out how to say so without insulting and directly challenging Sir Steezel. Callie, it seemed, had already made up her mind, because she sat back, looking up and down the row of lords and ladies. "I hear you, Sir Steezel, and I appreciate that. I think it comes down to knowing yourself. You know in your heart of hearts that it wouldn't help you make decisions to have some outside point of reference, and Rolando knows it helps him. And Serge," she looked past the other two knights at Sir Sanchez, He's figuring out that it helps him to have someone out there to love, and I think I should probably do that too. She looked down, blushing a bit. So I think I should choose one of you, your highnesses. Highnesses? Is that the right term? Lady Ariel Honan smiled again, her teeth glinting in warm mirth this time. We're lakes, so we are technically below you, but lownesses doesn't sound right. So yes, I think highnesses is fine. Or just ladyships, Lady Canadario said. The boys can be lumped into that, right, guys? Lord Mishigami and Lord Gigun Gazaigan agreed. So who should I choose? Callie muttered to herself, looking down the line, then at Serge. Rolando raised a finger in warning. No, it cannot be Sir Sanchez. It must be an unattainable love, and he is very attainable. Giggles ringed the table. Of course, Callie said. I just... Yeah, no, I meant like his opinion. Serge held up his hands. All worthy. Lady Canadario sat up very straight, vibrating with eagerness. Please don't be offended, Lady Canadario, but I think I ought to pledge myself to Lady Gichigama. She's like the most unattainable. Lady Canadario slumped a little bit, but said, Yes, she's the right choice. Lady Gishigama pushed her chair back so slowly, the humans imagined the sound of it scraping, even though it made none as it slid on the top of the water. As she stood, also with that aching slowness, Callie rose as well. Come, Lady Gishigama said. She motioned to a space in front of her, behind Lady Ariel Honan and Lady Canadario's chairs. Kneel. Callie rounded the end of the table and did so. Choose one, Lady Gichigama ordered Lord Mishigami, and she held out an open hand. The spirit of Lake Michigan stood behind his queen, then bent at the knees and reached down into the water. He felt around for a moment, then said, Ah, this will be perfect. He handed the blade to Lady Gichigama. She frowned at it at first, as though reading a note she'd intercepted as it was being passed between seemingly misbehaving students, then discovering something important within it. She looked over her shoulder at Lord Mishigami and smiled. The weapon looked like a joke. The handle was 8 inches long and round, like a miniature runner's baton. It had shiny gold caps on either end, but the bulk of it was wrapped in brown leather cord. Lady Gichigama twisted one of the gold caps, and a blade sprang out, but it was only 3 inches long. You will have to show her, Lady Gichigama told Lord Mishigama, and he bowed and stepped back. Callie looked up at the ridiculous knife in confusion, but when Lady Gichigama turned back to her, she lowered her head and took a deep breath, preparing herself for the ceremony. I dub thee Dame Callie the Lion-Hearted of Santa Leon, defender of the underestimated. Callie, her face obscured by the angle, blinked 3 times at this title. Rise, Lady Gichigama said. As Callie stood up, Lady Gichigami returned to her seat while handing the knife to Lord Mishigami. He stepped toward Callie and carefully placed the knife into her hands, holding it straight up and wrapping his large blue hands around her small pale brown ones. This, he said, is the blade Agaste, the small house or the small room. Be very careful where you point it, and will it to come out of the house. Callie felt the strange object in her hand. The leather was supple and grippy, but it felt strange because the weight of it was off. Though the weight felt correct for something so small, perhaps only twice as heavy as her trusty pocket knife, the source of the weight seemed to be coming from somewhere else, somewhere above the object itself, like it was being pushed down by an invisible finger. Like how? And then the blade appeared. The pommel extended from its original 8 inches to 10, stretching the space between the leather cords so little glints of dark gray metal, something like pewter, peeked through. The blade above stood a full 5 feet from the end of the pommel, and it was 9 inches wide. It is a kind of sword called a zenbato, Lord Mishigami said. That literally means horse killer. He looked to Lord Rolando and Sir Steezel almost apologetically. I know these are not real swords used by humans outside of some of your entertainments because they require magic to be practical. But, he looked up at Agasate, rising above them as tall as Reckless Ken standing on the back of its chair. This one is magic, so... He released Callie's hands, and she expected all of the weight of the blade to suddenly manifest and force it down to the surface of the water and beyond, cracking through whatever magical eggshell they stood upon and sinking into the depths of Lake Michigan. But the weight of the pommel held. Lady Ariel Honan told Lord Rolando and Sir Steezel, "You're going to need to teach her how to use that. It's more like a battle axe than a sword." "Oh, and the weight will be the same in the water," Lady Canadario told Callie. "It won't pull you down to the bottom or make you float up to the top. It will just be like swimming with a pocket knife, but, much bigger." Dame Callie stared up at the thing, eyes wide with wonder, hesitant to even move it the slightest bit lest she drop it down on someone and cut them in half. "Now," Lord Michigami said, "ask Agasate to go back inside its house." Before she could even ask how to do so, Callie thought the words, and the enormous blade disappeared, replaced with the 3-inch-long knife blade, which then retreated into the pommel when she turned the dial that looked like a miniature guard. "What do you think?" Lord Michigami asked. "It's f***ing dope as hell." Rolando looked at Serge. "You see why I do not understand your English? It is having sex and foolish as the underworld. This is how she says she likes this sword. It is not my fault I cut up the meat of your sayings." "Butcher," Serge said. "Yes, this." He turned to Callie. "I am sorry, Dame Callie. I should not be grumpy. This is a monumental day in your life." He reached forward and picked up his glass of wine. "I raise a toast to you, Dame Callie the Lion-Hearted of Santa Leon, defender of the underestimated. May you become one of the greatest knights-errant to ever walk the earth, live a long and happy life, and die in your sleep, safe in your own bed." By the time he was finished, everyone had raised their glass, except Callie, who still stood behind the ladies and lords with her sword, now a kind of baton. "Well, the last part got a little creepy, but thank you, Lord Rolando." "I am sorry about that. It is a dangerous line of work. Just ask Poe." "The bird got to live longer than I did," Reckless Ken said from the far end of the table. "I guess being a knight-errant is safer than being a tightrope walker." Poe shouted something at him in Catalan, which had 6 syllables and roughly translated as an order to go to the excrement, but it sounded like 6 raven caws of different kinds. Reckless Ken hopped down on the seat of the chair and turned in a slow circle in the wider space, taking time to show the raven his butthole. "Well, Poe was a squire, not a full knight-errant," Rolando said. Coman, who could not eat the food, found it could take a small handful in its paw and throw it at Rolando effectively. He could have dodged it with ease, but he was distracted by the raven's beak pecking him painfully in his shoulder. "Sorry, I apologize, dear Poe." "People," Sir Steezel shouted, "before our hosts drop us in the lake for our undignified behavior." The swearing, food-throwing, pecking, and butthole showing ceased. "May I suggest we get back to the business at hand? Lord Michigami, you said you knew someone who might help us find Fenkum?" "Yes, I know you are warrior mages." He nodded to Dame Callie, and a warrior mage in training. "But to cast a spell powerful enough to find a wizard who's trying to hide himself, you'll need someone with equal magic power." "I should not have released the djinn." Rolando pounded a fist on his thigh. "Joda me," he muttered. "No, that was the right call," Serge said. "Well, we'll see how many innocent people the djinn kills before the Hanyas get to him," Sir Steezel said, "and how many they kill after that. It was a gamble, and the accounting will tell the story in the end." They turned their attention back to Lord Michigami. He paused for a second. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "No, not a djinn. Don't make deals with djinn. That ends badly." He shook the interruption away. "No, you need a wizard of your own." "Witch," Lady Ariel Honan corrected. "That's what I mean, a witch or a wizard." Ariel Honan tilted her head towards her brother. "I just thought, because—" "No, I remembered. I was just using a blanket term. Stupid sexist language. You need a wizard or a witch, and we know a witch." Ariel Honan raised her hands in supplication. "The witch is a trans woman, so I thought my brother was misgendering, because she used to be—" "No, I knew," he said, frustrated. "I believe you. I just thought you'd forgotten." The spirit of Lake Michigan closed his eyes and took a deep breath, his blue nostrils flaring as he inhaled. Anyway, her name is Harriet Galbraith, and, lucky for you, she lives near here. Not so much luck, Lord Gigugasaigon said. We just happen to know of her because she lives in our backyard, in a forest in the UP. Hope you have comfortable walking shoes. It's on Mackinac Island. No cars allowed. And she's not near any bike paths or roads for horse-drawn carriages. But if anybody can do the job, it's her. You just might want to get Dame Callie trained up with that sword a bit first. Her forest is not welcoming. She's a bit paranoid. Ariel Hunan scowled. She's a trans woman in America in 2026, and a witch. She has every reason to be worried about visitors. But you said we should get armor first, then go find her, right? Serge asked. He was more than a little excited to get a suit of armor like Rolando's. So back to Portland, then back here? Rolando said. And you can direct us to the person who can help us find armor for Sir Sanchez and Dame Callie? Ariel Honan, previously amused by the antics of their human and ghost guests, now felt guilty she'd offended her brother. But she couldn't resist her planned joke. I know exactly where to find him. She looked at the knight pledged to her service. And you, Sir Sanchez, will be able to find him with no difficulty at all. You've probably driven by his office 1,000 times in your previous occupation. His name is Plank. Plank the Armorer. You can find him at 2815 Southwest Barber Boulevard. She pressed her lips together, holding in a laugh. I don't get it, Serge said. Pull out your phone and look it up, Ariel Honan commanded. Lady Canadario actually clapped her hands with excitement. Okay, Serge drawled as he pulled his phone out of his pocket and pulled up his map program. That was... Lady Ariel Honan repeated the address as he typed it in and hit enter. He looked up at her suddenly, then rocked his head back and laughed at the sky. What? Callie said, through a primed smile. He waved his phone in her direction. It's the headquarters of the Under Armour Corporation. If you're excited about this project, please subscribe on YouTube or like and share on TikTok or Reels or whatever app you're on now. And if you're willing to support me as I craft this novel in serial form, please consider supporting my Substack or Patreon. Thanks to Tyler Walton and H. Jasper E., my newest Patreon patrons, and Brian Westby and Brian Slack, my newest Substack subscribers, and thanks to the 11,976 of you who are now subscribers to my channel on YouTube. We almost got to 12,000 this week, so let's see if we can get that up to 12,000 after this episode. I'd like to give shout-outs to fellow creators, so if you're a Patreon patron or a Substack subscriber or a YouTube subscriber and you have a book or some other project for me to plug, please email NotAPipePublishing at NotAPipePublishing@gmail.com and I'll mention it here on the show. See you back here for Chapter 24 of Tilting at Windmills, Brick by Brick. I leave that to you, but I will give you a teaser. Our crew comes back to Portland to get magical armor for Serge and Callie, so we get more magic stuff.